Now that we're talking about cooperation in the global community, there really isn't a better example of cooperation than the United Nations Millennium Development Goals. In September of 2000, the world's largest gathering of world leaders came together from all around the world to try and address global development and eradicate extreme poverty. The goals that they set out, there were 8 of them, were intended to try and eliminate or at least cut by half extreme poverty. This is a great example of cooperation because states collectively wanted to address this problem. But it's also an example of how difficult it is to do just that, to work together to face and solve collective problems. Ultimately, these 8 goals demonstrated the global commitment that states made to try and increase and enhance the well-being of people around the world. So the first of these 8 goals is to actually address extreme poverty. This goal specifically outlined that states would work together to reduce by half the number of people that were living on $1.25 a day or less. Another aspect of this goal was to try to achieve full employment, particularly for young people and women, in addition to the rest of the population. And finally, this goal set out that they wanted to reduce by half those who are suffering from extreme hunger and malnourishment. The second Millennium Development Goal has to do with universal education and the fact that boys and girls alike should be able to have access to education in their home countries. So the goal was to try to enhance access to public education for everyone, boys and girls, at least through primary school. The third goal has to do with gender equality and empowering women. What we know about women in the global community and their connection to poverty is that it's usually women and children that suffer from extreme poverty the most. And yet, if you educate women, if you raise women out of poverty, you're much more likely to be successful for generations to come. Educated women, those who are pulling themselves out of poverty, are creating a situation where they're less likely to have their children and their future grandchildren also being raised in poverty. The fourth Millennium Development Goal has to do with child mortality. There are too many children around the world dying before their 5th birthday. So this goal has in mind reducing by 2/3 the number of children that don't live to be 5 years old. This, of course, is related to healthcare and the reduction of disease so that children can live happy and healthy lives. The 5th Millennium Development Goal also has to do with healthcare, but specifically it focuses on maternal health. There are still far too many women around the world that die during childbirth. So enhancing prenatal care opportunities, access obviously to healthcare facilities, reducing teen pregnancy, and enjoying overall health and well-being is something that's a significant part of the Millennium Development Goals. The 6th Millennium Development Goal, also related to healthcare, has to do with disease and the spreading of disease. Of course, we see more diseases in poverty-stricken areas of the world. So the goal here is to specifically address diseases like HIV and AIDS, malaria, and other infectious diseases that can and should be addressed and eradicated. This, again, has to do with access to health care, access to drugs and medications that will help them address these diseases, but also educational campaigns and those kinds of lessons that students need to learn at a young age and that adults need to learn as they're older regarding their own health and well-being as it relates to these infectious diseases and how to stop the spread. Now, the 7th Millennium Development Goal has to do with a sustainable environment and trying to maintain and enhance a sustainable environment. In poverty-stricken areas, there's often poor water sanitation. This too leads to disease. There's often poor land use practices, poor agricultural practices that degrades the environment and doesn't produce enough food for those who need it. So the 7th goal has to do with really paying attention to the global environment, the local environment, and making sure that they use those resources wisely. Now, the 8th and final Millennium Development Goal has to do with developing a global partnership for development. Clearly, these goals that I've just outlined are not the only things that affect poverty and will enhance development if we eradicate extreme poverty and enhance environmental practices and enhance healthcare. There are other aspects of development that need to be addressed as well. So in this goal, countries are committing themselves to working together collectively to face things like debt crises and other financial instabilities and crises. There are also other issues involving the delivery of aid, foreign aid, as well as other types of development practices that need to be put into place in order to enhance development activities and reduce global poverty. So now that we've discussed these 8 Millennium Development Goals, I have to tell you much progress has been made in each of these areas. But by 2015, we're unlikely to meet most of these goals. We still have a long way to go. States still have a lot to do working together with poverty-stricken areas to help enhance their development. But without a doubt, there are distractions. The global financial crisis today, other hotspots, war and conflict around the world, that distract the developed nations from being able to engage in these Millennium Development practices and eradicate extreme poverty and help developing parts of the world. It's just a part of international relations that between 2000 and now, the world looks a little different. So what do you think about these goals? Are they the right ones? Are there things that are missing? What would you do differently? Tell us what you think.